The emergency board meeting was already in chaos when the nephew's assistant burst through the boardroom doors for the third time that morning. His face had gone from pink to red to a shade of gray that reminded everyone of spoiled meat. Still nothing. Every vendor portal is showing the same error message. The entire system is just gone. I was hundreds of miles away when it happened, sitting in a cafe in Edinburgh, watching my phone light up with increasingly frantic notifications. 17 missed calls from the office. 42 unread emails. A voicemail from the chief financial officer that was just heavy breathing and what sounded like muffled crying. 6 years. I'd spent 6 years building that vendor vetting platform from absolutely nothing. And in one morning, they watched £100 million in active contracts vanish because they decided the chairman's nephew, with his master's from a former polytechnic that accepted anyone with a pulse, deserved my job more than I did. The database license had expired exactly as scheduled, and I was the only one who knew it was tied to my employee credentials. Now, some might find their way here while searching for stories where corporate betrayal meets karma, where the overlooked become unforgettable, where quiet exits make the loudest statements. That's exactly what we explore here at the Payback Office channel. Those moments when professional courtesy ends and consequences begin, told without sugarcoating, without picking sides we haven't earned. Just the raw truth of what happens when companies forget that their best people are also human beings with options. If stories about workplace justice delivered cold sound worth your time, hitting subscribe helps this channel keep going. The goal is simple. Reach 8,000 subscribers who believe that everyone's professional story deserves to be told, especially the ones that make boardrooms uncomfortable. No pressure, just an open invitation if this is your kind of content. My name is Ariadne Vance. For 6 years, I was the Director of Vendor Relations and Platform Development at Hexagon Solutions, one of the Southeast's fastest-growing supply chain management firms. I grew up in a household where my mother cleaned houses and my father drove lorries. Not because we needed pity, but because they taught me that every person doing any job deserves respect. And that remembering where you came from isn't about shame. It's about never forgetting that empathy isn't optional. The platform didn't exist before me. That's not arrogance. That's documented fact. When I started at Hexagon Solutions, vendor management meant filing cabinets, Excel spreadsheets with broken formulas, and a process so outdated that someone was still using a Rolodex, an actual physical spinning Rolodex. In 2017, the company was mid-size then, handling maybe £30 million in contracts annually, working with about 200 vendors across 6 home counties. Everything was manual, everything was slow, everything was vulnerable to human error, and human error was expensive. My first 3 months, I just watched, observed how information moved, or more accurately, how it didn't move, how the procurement team in Berkshire had no idea that the logistics team in Surrey was vetting the same vendor they rejected 2 months earlier, how we'd lost a major client because nobody could verify our vendor's compliance certifications in time, even though we had the documentation somewhere in someone's filing cabinet. I wrote a proposal, 37 pages outlining a custom-built vendor vetting platform that would centralize everything: compliance tracking, performance metrics, contract renewals, risk assessment, real-time reporting, the works. The chief operating officer at the time, a woman named Rowena Blakely, actually read it, called me into her office on a Thursday afternoon. "This budget seems optimistic," she said, sliding the proposal across her desk. "It's realistic if I build it in phases. Start with core functionality, prove ROI, then expand. And you can do this. I can do this." She gave me 6 months and a budget that was about 60% of what I'd requested. "Prove me right," she said. I proved her right in 4 months. The first version was bare bones but functional. A centralized database where every vendor's information lived in one searchable location. Automated alerts for expiring contracts and compliance renewals. A rating system that tracked vendor performance across every team that worked with them. Within the first quarter after launch, we caught 3 vendors whose insurance policies had lapsed. We identified 2 who were charging different rates to different departments for identical services. We recovered about £245,000 in redundant costs that would have just evaporated into the fiscal year. Rowena Blakely went to the board with numbers that made them salivate. My budget increased. My team grew from just me to 3 people, then 7, then 12. Year 2. I added predictive analytics, machine learning models that could forecast vendor reliability based on historical performance data, market conditions, even weather patterns for vendors and logistics. We started catching problems before they became disasters. Year 3. We integrated financial forecasting so the platform could model cost scenarios based on vendor contract variations. The CFO started inviting me to strategy meetings. Year 4. We rolled out the client-facing portal. Our customers could log in and see real-time status updates on their projects, verified vendor credentials, compliance documentation, everything transparent and immediate. Our client retention rate jumped 19%. Year 5. Hexagon Solutions went from £30 million to £250 million in managed contracts. The company tripled in size. We were operating across 14 regions. The platform was handling it all without breaking a sweat. Every trade publication in the supply chain management space did features on our technology. I did interviews, spoke at conferences, sat on panels. The platform had become Hexagon's primary competitive advantage, the thing that separated us from every other mid-tier supply chain manager fighting for the same contracts. And I built it not alone. I had a brilliant team, but I architected every major decision, every expansion, every integration. The codebase had my fingerprints on every critical function. That included the database licensing. Here's something most people don't know about enterprise software. The expensive part isn't usually the platform you build. It's the infrastructure underneath, the servers, the security, the database management systems that actually store and process all that information. For our platform, we used an enterprise-grade database solution called VectorMax Enterprise. It was industry-leading, incredibly robust, and phenomenally expensive. The annual licensing fee was £280,000. Because I'd built the platform and managed all vendor relationships related to it, the VectorMax license was registered under my corporate credentials. My employee ID, my authorization, the billing went through corporate finance, but the actual license agreement, the legal document that allowed Hexagon to use VectorMax's technology, listed me as the primary account administrator. This wasn't unusual. In most companies, critical software licenses are tied to whoever manages that system, its administrative efficiency. But it also meant something very specific. If my employee status changed, if my credentials were deactivated, if I left the company, the license would need to be formally transferred to another administrator. That transfer required paperwork, verification, and about 3 weeks of processing with VectorMax's enterprise support team. I'd mentioned this in documentation multiple times. There was a whole section in the platform operations manual about license management, renewal dates, transfer protocols. It was filed in the shared drive. It was covered in the quarterly reports. Nobody read it. Why would they? The system worked. The contracts flowed. The money grew. Middle management doesn't read operation manuals when everything's running smoothly. Then came year 6. The first sign something had shifted was subtle. A new executive joined the company in January. Alistair Sterling, brought in as Chief Strategy Officer, a title that hadn't existed the week before he arrived. Alistair was early 60s, silver hair, expensive bespoke suits, handshake like a politician. His CV was impressive in the way that becomes suspicious once you look closer. Executive positions at 4 companies in 7 years, each stint ending right before some merger or restructuring. He was also the brother-in-law of Barnaby Thorne, Hexagon's chairman of the board. The relationship wasn't secret exactly, but it wasn't advertised either. You had to know to look for it. Alistair spent his first month taking meetings, learning the organization, asking questions that sounded strategic but felt like surveillance. He sat in on one of my team's sprint planning sessions, didn't contribute much, just observed, nodded, took notes in a leather portfolio that probably cost more than my monthly PCP car finance payment. "Impressive operation," he said afterward, lingering as my team filed out. "You've built something special here. We have a good team. But you're the architect, the visionary," he smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. How much of this could run without you? It was phrased as curiosity. It landed as a threat assessment. The platform's well documented. The team knows their domains, but any complex system needs experienced oversight. Of course, he nodded, still smiling, just wondering about redundancy, succession planning, best practices. He left. The room felt colder. February. Alistair started having closed-door meetings with Barnaby Thorne, the kind where assistants were told to hold all calls. March, I was asked to prepare a complete knowledge transfer document covering every aspect of the platform's architecture, operations, and vendor relationships. Just updating our records, Human Resources said. Enterprise risk management requires comprehensive documentation of all critical systems. It felt wrong, but I complied. What else could I do? It was a reasonable request. Technically, I created a 200-page document covering everything except the specific administrative details I considered need to know, including the VectorMax licensing structure. That information was already documented elsewhere. Repeating it felt redundant. April brought the reorganization announcement. The email went company-wide on a Tuesday morning. Subject line: Organizational evolution for continued growth. Corporate speak for we're changing things and you'll smile about it. The relevant section was buried in the third paragraph. Pleased to announce that Julian Thorne will be joining Hexagon Solutions as our new Senior Director of Platform Innovation and Vendor Strategy, bringing fresh perspective to our continued technological evolution. Julian Thorne, Barnaby's nephew, and as everyone quietly understood, Alistair Sterling's family too, once you traced how the two men were connected by marriage. 28 years old, his LinkedIn profile showed an undergraduate too. 2 degree in business studies, from a mid-ranking red brick university, 2 years at a consulting firm that was later investigated for inflating client billings, and 6 months as director of digital initiatives at a startup that folded 4 months after he left. His profile picture showed him on a yacht in the Solent. His listed skills included disruptive innovation, synergy optimization, and strategic paradigm shifting. He would be starting in 2 weeks. My title wasn't mentioned in the reorganization. My role wasn't clarified. The reporting structure wasn't explained. I scheduled a meeting with Rowena Blakely, the COO who'd greenlit my original proposal 6 years ago. Her assistant said she was unavailable, booked solid for the next 2 weeks. I tried the CFO. Same response. I sent an email to Alistair Sterling, asking for clarification on how Julian's role would interface with my team. The response came 6 hours later. Let's let Julian get settled and we'll organize structure organically. Appreciate your flexibility during this exciting transition. Exciting transition. Corporate speak for shut up and wait. Julian Thorne started on a Monday, arrived 90 minutes late, apologized with a grin that suggested he wasn't actually sorry, blamed the M25 traffic, even though he'd posted an Instagram story from an artisan bakery 2 streets from the office, 45 minutes before start of business. The introduction meeting was scheduled for 10. All hands for the platform division, my 12 team members plus leadership. Alistair Sterling did the introductions. Julian brings exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need to take this platform to the next level. His experience in digital transformation and strategic vendor relations will be invaluable as we scale. Digital transformation. The startup he'd worked at sold mealbox subscriptions. Julian stood, smiled, did the charisma routine that probably worked great at cocktail parties. Really excited to dig into what you all have built here. From what I've seen, there's huge potential, but also huge opportunity to optimize, streamline, maybe shake things up a bit. He laughed. Nobody else did. I'm a big believer in disruption. Nothing personal, just think sometimes legacy systems need fresh eyes. Legacy systems? The platform was 6 years old and running better than anything else in the industry. He looked directly at me for the first time. Ariadne, right? Looking forward to learning from you. I'm sure you've got tons of institutional knowledge we can download. Download like I was a hard drive. The meeting ended. Nobody had clarified the reporting structure. Nobody had explained what Julian would actually do. I stopped Alistair in the corridor. Can we talk about roles and responsibilities? My team needs clarity on who's directing what. Let's give it a week or 2. Let Julian get oriented. Alistair, I've built this platform from zero. I need to understand if my role is changing. His expression shifted. The polite mask dropped for just a second, and what showed underneath was cold calculation. Your role is to be a team player during a transition that's bigger than any one person. Can you do that? It wasn't a question. The next 2 weeks were administrative torture. Julian started attending my team meetings. Didn't ask permission. Just showed up, sat at the head of the table, interrupted sprint planning to suggest brainstorms about paradigm shifts. He countermanded my decisions. Small things at first, meeting times, reporting formats, then larger. He delayed a critical security update because he wanted to evaluate vendor relationships with our cybersecurity contractor. Despite that contractor having 5 years of flawless performance, he scheduled one-on-ones with my team members without telling me. Asked them questions about my management style, my decision-making, whether they felt empowered to innovate. 2 of my developers came to me uncomfortable. He's asking weird stuff, one said. Like, how much do we actually need you day to day? Could we run things without you? It feels like he's building a case. He was. The breaking point came during a vendor crisis that should have been routine. One of our largest logistics vendors, Stallworth Freight, flagged a compliance issue with their insurance coverage. A clerical error on their end, easily fixable, but it needed immediate attention because they were handling a £3.5 million contract for one of our biggest clients. I'd worked with Stallworth CEO, a man named Gideon Foyle, for 4 years. We had a relationship built on trust and direct communication. I drafted an email to Gideon outlining the issue and the fix, ready to send, when Julian appeared behind my desk. What's this? Compliance issue with Stallworth. Standard protocol. We flag it. They correct it. We verify. Everyone moves on. Hold on that. I turned to face him. This is time sensitive. The client has deliveries scheduled. And I'm saying, hold on. I want to review our vendor strategy with Stallworth. Maybe this is an opportunity to renegotiate terms. Gideon Foyle has been a reliable partner for years. This is a minor administrative error. If we come at him with renegotiation demands during a compliance crisis, we damage the relationship. That's old thinking. This is leverage. We use it. That's not how vendor relationships work. His smile vanished. I'm the senior director of vendor strategy. This is exactly how it works now. He took over the communication, sent Gideon an email that read, like a hostage negotiation, flagging the compliance issue, then immediately pivoting to concerns about cost efficiency and exploring competitive alternatives. Gideon's response came 3 hours later, curt and professional. We'll resolve the compliance issue immediately. Regarding cost discussions, happy to review when the current contract term concludes in 18 months as originally agreed. Julian wasn't satisfied. He scheduled a call with Gideon without telling me. I found out when Imogen, one of my senior analysts, came to my office pale. Julian just got off the phone with Stallworth. It didn't go well. How not well? Gideon Foyle told him that if Hexagon wanted to renegotiate mid-contract using compliance flags as leverage, Stallworth would fix the issue and then formally request to exit the partnership at the earliest contractual opportunity. £3.5 million in annual business. Jeopardized because Julian thought he could strong-arm a vendor I'd spent years building trust with. I went to Alistair's office. Didn't knock. Just walked in. We need to talk about Julian. Alistair looked up from his laptop, irritated. He's been here 2 weeks. Give him time to find his rhythm. He just tried to weaponize a compliance issue to shake down Stallworth Freight. And now we're at risk of losing a £3.5 million contract. That's his decision to make. He's exploring strategies. Strategies that damage relationships I spent years building. Then maybe those relationships were too dependent on you personally. We need institutional resilience, not key person risk. The corporate buzzwords were a wall I couldn't penetrate. Alistair, he doesn't know what he's doing. He has different methods. That doesn't mean wrong methods. Different methods just cost us a major vendor relationship. Alistair closed his laptop, leaned back. Ariadne, I'm going to be direct. Julian is Barnaby's nephew. Barnaby chairs the board. Julian is going to have a significant role in this company's future. You can adapt to that reality, or you can make things difficult for yourself. There it was. The truth without pretense. So competence doesn't matter. Competence comes in many forms. Julian has strategic vision. Julian has an uncle. Alistair's expression went cold. Careful. Or what? You'll demote me? Replace me with someone else's connected relative? If necessary. The room went silent. We stared at each other across his desk. The entire unspoken conflict suddenly concrete. Is that where this is going? I asked quietly. That depends entirely on whether you're willing to be a team player. I left his office, went back to my desk, opened my laptop. Gideon Foyle from Stallworth had sent me a direct email, not to my corporate account, but to my personal email, which he had from 4 years of professional conferences and industry events. Ariadne, what's going on over there? New chap called me, treated a compliance flag like a shakedown, then got hostile when I pushed back. You and I have always dealt straight with each other. Is this the new Hexagon approach? Because if it is, I need to know now. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that, too. What could I say? That the company was being run by nepotism, that my authority was being systematically dismantled, that I didn't know how long I'd even be there. I settled for. There's been some organizational restructuring. I'm working to ensure continuity in our vendor relationships. You have my word that Stallworth is valued. Gideon's response came fast. Your word I trust. The companies I'm starting to question. Let's talk soon off the record. 3 days later, Julian called an all-hands meeting for the platform division. We're implementing some changes, he announced, standing at the front of the conference room, like he owned it. Moving forward, all vendor communications need to flow through centralized approval. No more individual team members reaching out directly. Everything gets vetted through my office first. One of my analysts, a man named Declan, who'd been with the company for 8 years, raised his hand. That's going to create massive bottlenecks. We handle hundreds of vendor interactions weekly. Real-time issues need real-time responses. Then we'll hire more people in my office to handle volume, but we need consistent messaging. Too many cooks, you know. Another hand, Imogen. What about existing vendor relationships? Some of these people have direct contacts with specific team members. It's relationship-based. Those relationships belong to Hexagon, not individuals. We're institutionalizing them. He said it while looking directly at me. The meeting ended. My team filtered out, shell-shocked. Imogen lingered. He's dismantling everything you built. Yes. What are we going to do? I don't know yet. That night, I stayed late. Went through every vendor file, every contract, every relationship note. Not to take anything. All of it was company property. But to understand exactly what would happen if I left. The VectorMax license renewal notice was sitting in my inbox, 45 days out. I read the terms again carefully. The license was tied to my admin credentials. Renewal required my authorization. Transfer required a formal request. Processing time, verification. If my credentials were deactivated before the transfer completed, the license would lapse. If the license lapsed, the database locked. If the database locked, the entire platform became inaccessible. I documented this on page 147 of the operations manual, but I pulled up the access logs for that document. Last opened 11 months ago by me. I sent renewal reminders to Alistair, Julian, and the IT director. All three. Clear subject line. Critical, VectorMax license renewal. Required action needed. Alistair marked it red. No response. Julian didn't open it. IT. Auto-responded about Q2 infrastructure priorities. I forwarded the reminder to Rowena Blakely. Added a note. This is critical. Platform functionality depends on this renewal. Please ensure someone besides me is tracking this. She responded 6 hours later. Thanks for flagging. I'll make sure it's handled. No follow-up, no questions, just acknowledgement and delegation to nowhere. Week 3. Julian called me into a conference room. Alistair was there. So was someone from Human Resources I didn't recognize. Ariadne, we've been evaluating organizational structure, Alistair began. I knew where this was going. Julian is going to be taking point on platform strategy and vendor relations moving forward. We see you transitioning to more of an advisory capacity. You're demoting me. We're restructuring. Your contributions are valued, but we need different leadership competencies at this stage. Julian jumped in, trying for sympathetic. You'd still be integral. Senior consultant role. You'd report to me, help with knowledge transfer, provide strategic support, report to you. It's just org chart stuff. Doesn't change your value. Everything about his posture, his tone, his carefully practiced empathy said he'd rehearsed this. What if I say no? Alistair's expression didn't change. We'd understand if you felt this wasn't the right fit. We'd offer a standard separation package. There it was. Accept humiliation or leave. I need to think about it. Of course. 24 hours. I went home, sat in my flat, stared at my laptop, opened my CV, updated it with 6 years of achievements that were about to be handed to someone who couldn't explain what an API was. Opened my email, drafted a resignation letter. 3 paragraphs, professional, clean, effective, immediately. I didn't send it, not yet. Instead, I called my friend in Edinburgh, the one who'd been trying to recruit me for 2 years. The offer still opens. What happened? I told her, get out of there. She said immediately. You're worth 10 of whatever nepotism case they're pushing. When can you start? How soon do you need me? Yesterday. I sent the resignation at 6:47 a.m. the next morning. Effective immediately, I resigned from my position at Hexagon Solutions. Thank you for the opportunity. Best of luck with future endeavors. CCs to HR, Alistair, Julian, Rowena. By 7:30, my phone was ringing. I didn't answer. By 9:00, my corporate access was deactivated. Standard security protocol, which deactivated my VectorMax admin credentials, which meant nobody at Hexagon could approve the license renewal, which meant in 44 days the database would lock, and £100 million in contracts would go dark. I wasn't there when they realized what happened, but Imogen called me 3 days after I left, voice shaking. They're freaking out. IT just discovered that the VectorMax license is tied to your credentials, and nobody can access the admin panel. Julian tried to call VectorMax support, but they said license transfers require verification from the current admin of record. That's you. I sent reminders about the renewal multiple times. I know. IT found the emails. Alistair marked them, read, and did nothing. Julian never opened them. IT thought it was someone else's problem. And now they're panicking. Alistair's been in emergency meetings all day. Julian's trying to blame IT for not flagging it. IT is saying it was documented in your operations manual, and they assumed leadership was tracking it. It was documented. Page 147. Nobody read it, Ariadne. They're going through your files now, trying to figure out what else they don't know. That's not my problem anymore. Silence on the line. Then they're going to call you. Probably offer you money to come back and fix it. I don't work there anymore. I know. I just wanted to warn you. The calls started that afternoon. IT first, then Alistair, then Julian. I didn't answer any of them. The emails came next. Polite at first, then urgent, then desperate. Day 7. A formal letter from legal counsel. Overnight delivery. 3 pages of legal language suggesting I had ongoing obligations related to critical system transitions. My solicitor, I'd hired one the day after I resigned, responded with 1 paragraph. Miss Vance fulfilled all employment obligations during her tenure. All relevant documentation was provided to the company. She has no ongoing contractual obligations post-employment. Day 12, the offer came. Cedric Langdon, the CFO, sent a personal email from a Gmail account. Ariadne, off the record, we screwed up. I know it. You know it. Julian was a mistake. Alistair's on thin ice. We need help. VectorMax license expires in 32 days. If we can't renew it, we're looking at £100 million in breached contracts. The company might not survive. I'm authorized to offer £40,000 for 1 week of work. You walk us through the renewal process. Make sure everything transfers. Then you're done. No strings, please. 400 employees are counting on this company staying solvent. 400 employees. The number sat heavy. I thought about my team, about Imogen and Declan and the others who had nothing to do with Alistair's politics or Julian's incompetence. I thought about the vendors I'd built relationships with, Gideon Foyle at Stallworth, others who trusted Hexagon because they trusted me. I thought about the clients who'd signed contracts expecting the platform to work. Then I thought about Alistair's face when he told me to be a team player. I thought about Julian sitting at the head of my conference table talking about downloading my institutional knowledge. I thought about 6 years of my life being discarded for connections in politics. I declined the offer. Thank you for reaching out. Unfortunately, I'm unable to take on consulting projects at this time. Best of luck. Day 18. I accepted the job in Edinburgh. Better title, better pay, equity stake. My career was fine. Hexagon was spiraling. Day 20. Julian showed up at my flat. I was packing boxes when the doorbell rang. Looked through the peephole and saw him standing there, still in a bespoke suit, looking exhausted. I didn't open the door. Ariadne, I know you're there. Please. 5 minutes. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. What do you want, Julian? I need your help. The VectorMax situation. We're running out of time. Just tell me how to transfer the license. That's all. I'm not asking you to come back. Just instructions. It's documented. Operations Manual Section 8.4. License Management and Renewal Protocols. I read it. It says the current admin has to initiate the transfer. That's you. That was me. I don't work there anymore. Ariadne, please? I know things went badly. I know I was. I was doing what Alistair told me to do. Barnaby wanted me in the company and Alistair made it happen, and I didn't know how much I didn't know. You could have asked. I know I should have, but I was trying to prove I belonged there. And Alistair kept saying you were resistant to change, that you'd built the platform to be dependent on you, that we needed to break that dependency. So, you believed I was the problem. Alistair made a convincing case. And now you need me to fix what you broke. He looked down. Yes. No. People are going to lose their jobs. People lost their jobs when you took mine. You quit after you demoted me to make room for someone who doesn't know what a database license is. He flinched. I'm sorry. Genuinely. If I could undo it. You can't, and I'm not fixing your consequences. I closed the door. He stood outside for another minute, then left. Day 25. The industry publications picked up the story. Supply chain firm Hexagon Solutions faces platform crisis. Sources report major database issues at Hexagon. Anonymous employee quotes. The woman who built our entire system quit after they pushed her out for the chairman's nephew. Now nothing works and nobody knows how to fix it. Day 32. VectorMax's enterprise support sent their official response to Hexagon's transfer request. Imogen forwarded it to me. She was looking for jobs. Half her team was looking for jobs, and she'd stopped caring about corporate email policies. License transfer requires verification from the current administrator of record. As Miss Vance is no longer associated with your organization and has not consented to transfer, we cannot process this request without establishing a new enterprise contract. New contract setup requires 45 to 60 days for processing, approval, and technical implementation. The license expired in 13 days. Day 38, Alistair Sterling was placed on administrative leave. Day 40, Julian Thorne resigned. His LinkedIn updated. Excited to explore new opportunities and focus on personal growth. Day 43, Rowena Blakely called. I answered. Ariadne. Rowena. Silence. Then I should have fought for you. I knew what Alistair was doing. I knew Julian wasn't qualified. I told myself it was politics, that Barnaby wanted his nephew in the company. That you'd be fine. I was a coward. Yes, we're going to lose everything. The contracts, the clients, maybe the whole company. And it's because we threw away the person who actually built the thing that made us valuable. Yes. Is there anything I can say that would make you help us? I thought about it. Really thought about it? No. Okay. Her voice cracked. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. Thank you for saying that. She hung up. Day 45, May 15th, 11:59 p.m., British Summer Time. The VectorMax license expired. At 12:01 a.m., every vendor portal went dark. The emergency board meeting happened at 6:00 a.m. on May 16th. Imogen was still sending me updates, even though she'd given her notice the day before. It's chaos. Complete chaos. Every client-facing dashboard is showing error messages. Nobody can access vendor data. The compliance tracking is gone. Contract renewal alerts are gone. Everything. Barnaby Thorne, the chairman who'd installed his nephew, sat in silence while IT explained that without VectorMax access, they had no way to manage vendor relationships, verify compliance, track contracts, or provide clients with the real-time transparency that had become Hexagon's signature feature. How long to fix it? Barnaby finally asked. If VectorMax approves a new enterprise contract today, we're looking at 6 to 8 weeks for implementation. We'd have to rebuild the entire database instance, migrate all the data, reconfigure integrations, and if they don't prioritize us, 3 to 4 months, maybe longer. 3 to 4 months. By day 2, clients started pulling contracts. The first was a manufacturing company in Yorkshire that had £7 million in active vendor agreements managed through Hexagon. Their procurement director sent a terse email. Per Section 12 of our service agreement, we're exercising our right to terminate for failure to provide contracted services. Please confirm transition timeline. By end of week 1, 14 clients had initiated termination proceedings. Combined value, £40 million. The lawsuit started week 2. Breach of contract, failure to provide services, fraudulent misrepresentation. One client alleged that Hexagon had knowingly entered into contracts they couldn't fulfill, citing the fact that the platform was dependent on a license that was about to expire. That one hurt because it wasn't true. They could have fulfilled it. They just had to read the documentation and process the renewal, but they hadn't. Week 3. A major logistics client in Greater Manchester, £20 million in annual contracts, sued for damages. Their vendor deliveries had been disrupted because they couldn't access compliance certifications in time. They'd lost a major customer of their own. As a result, the legal bills were catastrophic. VectorMax eventually approved a new enterprise contract, but at premium pricing, £480,000 annually, up from £280,000, because Hexagon was now a high-risk client with demonstrated management failures. Implementation took 9 weeks. By the time the platform came back online, Hexagon had lost 60% of its client base. The company that had managed £250 million in contracts was down to £100 million and dropping. Week 8. The merger talks started. Corporate speak, for we're dying and need someone to absorb us. A larger competitor, Integrated Supply Networks, offered to acquire Hexagon's remaining contracts and client relationships. They'd keep about 40% of the staff. The rest would be made redundant. Barnaby Thorne would retire with a massive golden parachute. Alistair Sterling was already gone. Julian had resurfaced at a friend's estate agency in Cheshire, posting LinkedIn updates about exciting new chapters. Rowena Blakely was one of the few executives ISN wanted to keep. She'd navigated the crisis as best she could, and she had relationships that still meant something. She sent me a message in September, 4 months after everything collapsed. "I hope you're doing well. You were right to leave. I should have left, too. What we did to you was unforgivable. I wanted you to know that I told the board on record that losing you was the single biggest management failure in this company's history. It didn't save anything, but I needed to say it. I appreciated that. It didn't change what happened, but it mattered that someone admitted the truth. Imogen and 4 others from my original team ended up at my new company in Edinburgh. I'd put in recommendations and my boss hired them immediately. If you trained them, they're worth having," she said. "We rebuilt something better. A platform that we owned equity in. A company where competence mattered more than connections." Declan, my analyst who'd questioned Julian's bottleneck plan, landed at a tech startup in Cambridge, sent me a message. "Thanks for showing me what self-respect looks like. I'll never stay somewhere I'm not valued again." The industry learned too. 3 trade publications did deep dives on what happened at Hexagon. The narratives varied, but the core was consistent. A company destroyed itself by prioritizing nepotism over competence, by ignoring the expertise that made them valuable, by assuming that platforms run themselves. One article quoted an anonymous board member. "We thought the technology was the asset. We didn't realize the person who built the technology was the asset. By the time we understood the difference, it was too late." I got job offers, a lot of them. Companies that wanted someone who could build platforms, who understood vendor relationships, who had a track record of creating value. Every interview someone would eventually ask about Hexagon. What happened there? My answer was always the same. I built something extraordinary. Leadership decided they didn't need me. They were wrong. Nobody pushed further. They didn't need to. 6 months after the collapse, I ran into Cedric Langdon, the CFO, at an industry conference in London. He looked older, tired. He'd survived the merger but taken a title reduction. Ariadne. Cedric. He laughed, bitter. "You know what the worst part is? I read the documentation after everything fell apart. Page 147. License renewal protocols. You laid it all out. We just never looked. Most people don't read the manual until something breaks." "Yeah." He shook his head. "I wanted to hate you. Easier than hating myself. But you didn't do anything wrong." "We did. I know. The platform you built was extraordinary. Best thing that ever happened to that company, and we destroyed it for politics." "Yes." He nodded, started to walk away, then turned back. "For what it's worth, you were right to leave, and you were right not to come back. We didn't deserve your help." He disappeared into the crowd. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired of carrying other people's mistakes. The story made its way through industry circles in different versions. Some painted me as vindictive. Some painted me as a victim. Some just focused on the corporate failure. But the people who mattered, the ones making hiring decisions, the ones building companies, the ones who understood what it meant to create something from nothing, they understood. They understood that expertise has value. They understood that relationships matter. They understood that you can't replace institutional knowledge with a nice CV and family connections. One of the most satisfying moments came 8 months after I left. A recruiter reached out about a position at a major supply chain consulting firm. During the interview, the CEO said something that stuck with me. "We've been watching what happened at Hexagon. Complete organizational failure. They had a competitive advantage built by one person's vision and expertise, and they traded it for nepotism. Now they're a case study in what not to do." He leaned forward. "We don't want to be Hexagon. We want to be the company that understands what you bring to the table and values it accordingly." So here's my question. What would it take for you to build something here? I didn't take that job. I was happy in Edinburgh. But the conversation validated something important. What happened at Hexagon wasn't my failure. It was theirs. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't plant bombs. I didn't delete data or corrupt systems. I just stopped protecting them from their own decisions. The Vector Max license was always going to need renewal. That was never a secret. The fact that it was tied to my credentials was documented in multiple places. The renewal timeline was communicated clearly and repeatedly. They chose to ignore it. They chose to deactivate my credentials without understanding what those credentials controlled. They chose to prioritize Barnaby Thorne's nephew over the person who'd built their primary competitive advantage. Every single failure point was a choice they made. I just stopped preventing the consequences. Sometimes people ask if I regret it, if the scorched earth exit was worth it. The answer is complicated. Do I feel bad that people lost their jobs? Yes. Most of those people had nothing to do with what happened to me. But did I owe Hexagon Solutions my expertise after they decided I was disposable? No. Did I owe them rescue from consequences they created? No. I documented everything. I sent reminders. I built operational manuals. I did my job completely. Right up until the minute I wasn't allowed to do it anymore. They chose to ignore the documentation. They chose to devalue my expertise. They chose nepotism over competence. I didn't make those choices. I just stopped protecting them from the outcomes. There's a difference between sabotage and simply stepping aside. I didn't destroy Hexagon Solutions. They destroyed themselves. I just wasn't there to save them from it. A year after everything collapsed, Gideon Foyle from Stallworth Freight reached out. Heard you landed on your feet. Good. Hexagon's loss. Want to grab coffee next time you're in the Midlands? I've got some consulting projects that could use your expertise. We met in Birmingham. Talked about the industry, about vendor relationships, about what makes partnerships work. You know what I respected about you? He said. You always dealt straight. Never played games. When Julian tried to shake me down over that compliance flag, I knew immediately that wasn't you. That was someone who didn't understand that business relationships are built on trust, not leverage. He thought he was being strategic. He was being stupid and arrogant. Thought he could muscle vendors because he had a title. Gideon shook his head. You can't muscle relationships. You either build them right or you don't have them at all. We ended up partnering on 3 projects over the next year. Good work, good money, built on mutual respect. Everything Hexagon threw away. The final piece of closure came 18 months after I left. ISN, the company that had acquired Hexagon's remains, announced they were discontinuing the Hexagon brand entirely. The name would be retired. The contracts would be fully integrated under the ISN umbrella. Hexagon Solutions, the company that had grown from £30 million to £250 million on the strength of a platform I built, ceased to exist. Barnaby Thorne had retired. Alistair Sterling was working for a mid-tier consulting firm in Canary Wharf. Julian Thorne's LinkedIn said he was a freelance business strategy consultant. Translation: unemployed. Rowena Blakely was still at ISN doing good work, carrying the weight of what happened, and I was in Edinburgh building something I owned, working with people who valued competence, making decisions that were mine to make. Hexagon Solutions is a case study now. Business schools use it to teach about knowledge management, employee retention, and the hidden costs of nepotism. I'm just Ariadne Vance. The woman who built something extraordinary walked away when it stopped being mine and didn't look back when it burned. Because sometimes the best revenge is just letting people experience the full weight of their own choices. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is absolutely nothing at all. So, if you've made it this far and stories about the hidden leverage and expertise, the cost of undervaluing people, and the consequences that follow corporate arrogance sound like something worth your time, consider subscribing. The channel's working toward 8,000 subscribers who appreciate that professional karma isn't about revenge. It's about natural consequences finally catching up. No pressure, just an invitation if this kind of content resonates. I'm doing fine now. Better than fine, building something I own, working with people who value competence over connections, making decisions that are mine to make. Hexagon Solutions is gone. A cautionary tale. A warning about what happens when companies forget that their best people are also human beings with options. I'm still here, still building, still proving that the best response to being undervalued isn't anger. It's success.